Welcome to this edition of News Today, a series where we briefly discuss and analyze important news of the day. Without delay, take a look at the headlines first. 44% of sitting member of parliament face criminal charges, 5% are billionaires, mentions the Association of Democratic Reforms report. Ministry of Home Affairs extended Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958 in Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. World's first ever nuclear energy summit held in Brussels. Ukraine's foreign minister paid an official visit to India. United Nations Environment Programme released Global Status Report for Buildings and Construction 2024. United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction highlights India's rising role in global crisis response system. In the very first news, 44% of sitting member of parliament face criminal charges, 5% are billionaires, mentions the Association of Democratic Reforms ADR report. The latest ADR report also highlights that 50% of MPs facing criminal charge are from Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Himachal Pradesh. And also among the sitting MPs with criminal charges, 29% face serious criminal cases including allegations of murder, attempt to murder, crime against women, etc. With these latest data on one side, let's also understand what is criminalization of politics. It refers to infiltration of criminals, lawbreakers, and corrupt individuals into a political system who then use their influence to further their own interests at cost of country and its citizens. Some of the reasons for the increase in criminalization include the growing nexus between political parties and criminals, lack of laws and rules for governing elections procedure, role of money power, that is, buying votes for another illegitimate purpose. Furthermore, the criminalization also has its impacts, which include that it stands against system of free and fair elections. It also affects good governance and integrity of public servants. Lastly, it increases the corrupt activities like taking bribes, embezzling public funds, etc. that damages social fabric of society. Moving on, let us also take a look at some of the Supreme Court judgments that are intended to curb criminalization of politics. In Lily Thomas v. Union of India 2013, the Supreme Court ordered that MPs or the state legislatures convicted of crime with a minimum sentence of 2 years imprisonment would cease to be the members of the House immediately. And in the Public Interest Foundation v. Union of India 2018 case, the Supreme Court declared that a person cannot be disqualified from membership in a legislative body on mere framing of criminal charges against them. Moving on to the next news. Ministry of Home Affairs extended Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958 AFSPA in Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. The Assam government has also extended the act in 4 of its districts for another 6 months. Before delving deeper, let's learn some important facts about AFSPA Act 1958. The act gives armed forces the power to maintain public order in disturbed areas. The Act also gives special powers to armed forces like to prohibit a gathering of 5 or more persons in an area, use force or open fire if they feel a person is in contravention of law, arrest a person without a warrant, enter or search a premises and ban possession of firearms. With respect to the powers to declare specific areas to be disturbed areas, the disturbed area declared under Section 3 of AFSPA is when a part or whole state or union territory is in such a condition that the use of armed forces in aid of civil power is necessary. Also, the central government or governor of state or administrator of UT can declare whole or part of state or union territory as a disturbed area. Further, here are the issues associated with the Act. It violates right to life and right to remedy. It can propel the misuse of powers by armed forces. Lastly, it also violates international law like Universal Declaration of Human Rights, etc. Immunity provided to the armed forces under AFSPA include that there can be no prosecution, suit, or any other legal proceeding instituted except with previous sanction of the central government against anything done or purported to be done in exercise of powers conferred by the Act. Lastly, the key Supreme Court judgment related to AFSPA is Extrajudicial Execution Victim Families Association versus Union of India case 2016, in which Supreme Court held that there is no concept of absolute immunity from trial by criminal court even when an offence is committed by an army personnel.
Moving ahead, World's first ever nuclear energy summit held in Brussels. The world's first ever nuclear energy summit was jointly organized by the International Atomic Energy Agency in Belgium to promote nuclear energy. The summit was organized in the wake of the historic inclusion of the nuclear energy in the global stocktake agreed at the UN Climate Change Conference 2023. The inclusion of nuclear energy in the global stocktake has called for accelerating its deployment. Currently, nuclear energy is responsible for around 25% of global low-carbon electricity production. The summit was attended by more than 30 nations, including India and the European Union. Let us also understand the relevance of switching to nuclear energy. They are a clean source of electricity with minimal carbon footprint. Recent technological advancement in the form of small modular reactors or SMRs will make it more feasible. The small modular reactors are advanced nuclear reactors that have a power capacity of up to 300 MW per unit. Also, there is perennial availability of the fuel. Meanwhile, the challenges in adopting nuclear energy include safety concerns post-Fukushima nuclear disaster, and they are also vulnerable to cyber attacks. It requires high upfront costs for building a nuclear power plant, and these projects also face long delays. Lastly, let's also discuss and understand about International Atomic Energy Agency. The agency was established in 1957 as an autonomous international organization within the United Nations system and is headquartered in Vienna, Austria. Its objective is to work with its member states and multiple partners worldwide to promote safe, secure, and peaceful nuclear technologies. The Global Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and other treaties against the spread of nuclear weapons entrust the IAEA as the Nuclear Inspectorate. The International Atomic Energy Agency has also evolved an additional protocol mechanism. It enables the agency to verify the peaceful use of all nuclear material in states. Also, India is part of this protocol. Currently, IAEA has 178 members, including India, and one of its key initiatives is Atoms for Net Zero. Moving ahead in the news, Ukraine's foreign minister paid an official visit to India. The Ukraine's foreign minister visits amid efforts to seek a peaceful resolution to the more than 2-year-old Russia-Ukraine conflict. Recently, Ukraine has also extended an invitation to India to participate in the forthcoming peace summit set to be hosted by Switzerland. The summit is to be based on the Ukrainian president's 10-point peace formula, which aims to bring lasting peace to Ukraine and put an end to the war. Meanwhile, a review meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission was convened, signaling a concerted effort to restore cooperation between India and Ukraine to pre-conflict levels. Coming to the bilateral relationship between the two countries, the two are tied beyond politics and economics. The bond between India and Ukraine is deeply rooted in culture. India was one of the first countries to recognize Ukraine. Also, India is Ukraine's major export destination in the Asia-Pacific as per 2020 data. Elements of India's soft power, including dances, yoga, philosophy, Ayurveda, and spirituality, resonate deeply with the people of Ukraine, fostering a sense of connection and understanding. Ukraine has long been a preferred destination for medical education for Indian students, with approximately 18,000 Indian students studying in Ukraine before the conflict. In the face of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, India remains steadfast in its commitment to peace. Advocating for a peaceful resolution through dialogue and diplomacy, India stands ready to engage in all avenues that will help bring an end to the war. Additionally, India continues to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, reaffirming its support for the people affected by the crisis.
In another news, United Nations Environment Programme released Global Status Report for Buildings and Construction Building GSR 2024. The report was published jointly by UNEP and Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction Global ABC. Some of the key findings of the released report are as follows. The building and construction sector (BCS) accounts for about 21% of global greenhouse gas emissions. In 2022, buildings were responsible for 34% global energy demand and 37% of energy and process-related carbon dioxide emissions. India is attributing 40% of its CO2 emissions to buildings. But what's the need to decarbonize building and construction sector? Decarbonizing the sector will considerably limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius as mentioned in Paris Agreement, and achieve net zero by 2050 by reducing embodied carbon in building materials. Some of the key initiatives taken for making building and construction sector sustainable include: at a global level, Declaration Day Chalet, adopted at first ever Buildings and Climate Global Forum. It aimed at fostering international cooperation to address climate challenges within building sector. Another, Energy Performance of Buildings Directive by European Union, which mentioned zero emission standards for new buildings by 2030. Also, Buildings Breakthrough Initiative by France and Morocco at COP28, which talks about near zero emission and resilient buildings by 2030. Lastly, the Clean Heat Forum, initiated by UK. At a national level, first ever city-specific zero carbon buildings action plan launched in Nagpur. And Energy Conservation Amendment Act 2022 provides for Energy Conservation and Sustainability Building Code. Lastly, let's also understand some facts about Global ABC. Founded at COP21, the Alliance acts as a leading global platform for all built environment stakeholders committed to a common vision: a zero-emission, efficient and resilient buildings and construction sector. The current existing challenges in decarbonizing building and construction sector are poor building practices that can contribute to maladaptation, leading to increased energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. And also, continued construction of carbon-intensive new buildings in climate risk-exposed areas. Some of the recommendations that can contribute to zero emissions include developing a building energy codes aligned with zero emissions building principles, providing financial incentives for greater investments in decarbonizing BCS.
Moving ahead in the news, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction highlights India's rising role in global crisis response system. India's approach to global crisis has always been deeply rooted in the ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which translates to the world as one family. Standing to its commitment, India has joined the Champions Group of the Global Crisis Response Group, set up in 2022 by the United Nations Secretary General. Let's now delve deeper into India's pivotal role in global crisis response. India's proactive stance in the face of natural disasters has positioned it as a key first responder on the global stage. Recently, it launched Operation Dost following devastating earthquakes in Turkey, showcasing its enhanced humanitarian assistance and disaster relief capabilities. Not stopping there, India had also initiated Operation Karuna to aid Myanmar during Cyclone Mocha, demonstrating its commitment to assisting neighboring nations in times of crisis. In conflict zones, India has been instrumental in delivering essential supplies such as wheat and medicines to places like Afghanistan and Ukraine, offering crucial aid to the conflict-affected populations. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, India spearheaded the Vaccine Maitri initiative, providing vaccines and essential medical equipment to nations grappling with the health crisis, exemplifying its dedication to global health emergencies. Furthermore, India's collaboration with UN agencies, including the World Food Programme, underscores its commitment to strengthening multilateral cooperation in addressing pressing issues like food insecurity. Not confined to humanitarian efforts alone, India's Navy recently executed successful anti-piracy operations such as the rescue of a hijacked Iranian fishing vessel in the Arabian Sea, showcasing its prowess in maritime security. Further now, let's take a moment to understand the organization shedding light on India's contributions, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, or UNDRR. It was established in 1999 with its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. The primary mission of UNDRR is to provide leadership and support to accelerate global efforts in disaster risk reduction, aligning with the goals of the Sendai Framework for the Disaster Risk Reduction. The place in news for today is North Korea, which is also known as Democratic People's Republic of Korea, with its capital Pyongyang. It is in the news as Russia has vetoed a United Nations expert panel that has been monitoring sanctions against North Korea. Talking about its political features, it is an East Asian country occupying the northern part of the Korean peninsula. It is bordered by the China and Russia to the north and the Republic of Korea, also known as South Korea, to the south. The surrounding water bodies are the East Sea or Sea of Japan and the Yellow Sea in the west. Talking about its geographical features, its highest peak is Mount Pektu, and its major rivers are Yulu, Tumen, Tadang, and Imjin.
As we conclude today's main news, let's take a look at some quick updates. International Court of Justice (ICJ) orders Israel to address famine in Gaza and ensure unhindered supply of food. It is a principal judicial organ of UN established in 1945 by UN Charter. It is headquartered at Peace Palace in The Hague, Netherlands. Procurement of goods and services through government e-market has crossed Rs 4 lakh crore. It is public procurement portal for goods and services for all central government and state government ministries, departments, public sector units, etc. It was launched in 2016 by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. 1 Million Youth Actions Challenge is promoted by the One UN Climate Change Learning Partnership. It aims to encourage youth aged 10 to 30 years old to take concrete actions for a more sustainable future. Also, it works to promote 4 Sustainable Development Goals. Geologists predict potential emergence of a new ocean at the Afar Triangle, also known as Afar Depression, located in the Horn of Africa. It represents the northernmost portion of the Great Rift Valley. International Energy Agency released Clean Energy Transitions Program Annual Report 2023. It was launched in 2017 by IEA and is leading the global fight against climate change by accelerating clean energy transitions. First flight of Made in India indigenous light combat aircraft Tejas Mark 1A fighter aircraft has been completed in Bengaluru. It is developed by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It is an advanced variant of LCA Mk1 which has already been inducted by Indian Air Force. Kerala Kalamandalam has lifted gender restrictions for boys to learn Mohiniyattam. It is the classical solo dance form of Kerala. Major themes are of love and devotion to God, usually Lord Vishnu or his incarnation Lord Krishna as lead character. Sangeet Natak Academy is reviving an ancient theatre performance of Tholu Bambalata puppetry which is on the brink of extinction. It is also known as the dance of leather dolls. It is mainly performed in the Godavari region of Andhra Pradesh. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the link in the description below.